Hello everyone and welcome to The Deep Dive. Today we're diving into some strategies for anyone who wants to get more out of reading novels, especially in English as a second language.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you want to boost your comprehension, maybe your speaking skills too, but without feeling overwhelmed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got this podcast called Speak Smart that's full of tips.
Yeah.
And I was really struck by how much they emphasized choosing the right book as like the first step. What stands out to you about their advice?
Well, it's fascinating that they don't just say pick something you like.
Right.
They get into matching the book to your English level.
Yeah.
Like, why make things harder on yourself than they need to be?
It's true. It's like training for a marathon. You wouldn't just start by running 26 miles on day one, right?
No.
So what are some good starter novels for someone still building their English reading muscles?
Well, they talk about graded readers, which I think is a brilliant idea.
Oh, yeah?
These are simplified versions of classic or popular books. So you still get the story, the characters, all the good stuff.
Right.
But the language is a bit easier to grasp.
So like training wheels for your reading.
Exactly. And as you get more comfortable, they suggest moving on to young adult fiction, like Harry Potter or The Hunger Games. Those have engaging stories, but the language is still accessible.
And I love about those examples is that they're not baby books, you know?
Right.
They're books that native English speakers enjoy too, so you're not missing out on the fun.
Exactly. And even just starting with short stories can be a huge confidence boost.
Totally.
You get that feeling of finishing something.
Yeah.
And it keeps you motivated to keep going.
So we've got the right book, we're feeling good, we open it up, and then what?
Right?
Speak Smart had some interesting advice about what to do during the reading process to avoid feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways there for you?
One that stood out was their emphasis on not getting bogged down in every single word.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think we've all been there. You hit an unfamiliar word, and then suddenly you're down this dictionary rabbit hole.
Oh, totally. And 20 minutes later, you've forgotten what you were even reading.
Exactly. And they make a good point that it actually hinders your progress because you're so focused on the tiny details that you miss the big picture.
They use a great analogy. It was like missing a beautiful view because you're too busy looking at a single leaf.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that language learning is a process. You're not going to understand every single word right away, and that's okay.
So focus on the overall meaning, using the words you do know, and the context to kind of piece things together.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that your brain is actually making connections even when you don't realize it.
Oh.
So even if you don't understand a word at first, you might suddenly get it a few pages later because you've seen it used in different contexts.
Like your brain is doing the work for you in the background.
Yeah.
So we're choosing the right book. We're not getting hung up on every little word. Any other advice from Speak Smart on how to make this reading process feel manageable?
Oh, they had a really good tip about setting realistic goals.
Okay.
Instead of pressuring yourself to finish a whole chapter in one sitting, maybe aim for like 15 minutes a day or something.
I love that. Make it a habit, something you enjoy, not a chore.
Exactly. It's like working out. You wouldn't expect to be bench pressing 200 pounds on your first day at the gym, right?
Right.
You start small, you stay consistent, you gradually build up that strength.
That's how we become reading superstars. So we've got a good foundation now, the right book, the right mindset.
Yes.
But how do we actually make sure we're getting the most out of what we're reading?
Right.
That's what we'll tackle in the next part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it. So we've talked about kind of setting the stage for successful reading, but now let's get into some strategies to boost your comprehension and keep you really engaged. Speak Smart had a whole section on active reading techniques, and there were some great takeaways there.
Oh yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. They talk about previewing a chapter
Yes.
before you even start reading, which I'll admit I never really thought about doing.
Right.
But it makes so much sense.
It's such a simple but powerful technique.
Yeah.
Just take a few minutes to look at the chapter title, any headings, maybe skim the first few sentences. It's like getting a sneak peek of the show before it starts.
And I think what's cool about it is that it activates your brain.
Yeah.
You know, you start thinking about what the chapter might be about. You pick up on some keywords.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier to follow along when you actually start reading.
Exactly. Priming the pump for better comprehension.
Yeah.
And speaking of getting your brain fired up,
Yes.
they had another tip that I love, visualization.
Ooh, yes. This is where you use your imagination.
Yeah.
They talk about picturing the story like a movie in your head as you read. It's like you're creating your own personal adaptation of the book.
It's amazing because visualization makes reading more fun, but it also boosts your comprehension and memory.
Wow.
So when you're actively creating those images in your mind, you're engaging more deeply with the material and you're more likely to remember it.
I think it helps you make connections between different parts of the story, too.
Absolutely.
It's like building a mental map of the plot, the characters, the setting.
It's all about making those connections, building a richer understanding.
Yeah.
Even with great visualization, sometimes we need a break.
Oh, for sure.
Speak Smart made a point about pausing and reflecting on what you've read.
This is something I'm guilty of not doing enough. I just kind of power through, wanting to get to the next chapter.
We all do it.
Yeah.
But those pauses are where the real learning happens. They suggest asking yourself some questions after each section. What just happened? Who are the characters? What are their motivations?
Yeah.
What are the key themes or ideas?
It's like having a conversation with yourself about the book.
Exactly.
It helps you solidify the information and make sure you're not just skimming.
And it can also help you identify any areas where you might need to go back and reread.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of revisiting the text, Speak Smart also had tips on note-taking and highlighting.
Yeah, I used to think this was only for students studying for exams.
Right.
But they make a good case for why it can be helpful for any reader.
It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just jot down key points, new words, or even passages you found interesting.
It's like you're creating your own little study guide.
Exactly. And it makes it so much easier to review later if you want to discuss the book with someone.
Oh, speaking of discussion, that was another great point they made, talking about the book with others.
Yes, put those speaking skills to the test.
Yeah.
Find a friend, join an online book club, or even chat with a teacher.
It not only helps you understand better, but gives you a chance to practice expressing your thoughts in English.
It's a win-win. And if you need a little motivation boost, they had this tip. Set rewards.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
Maybe you finish a chapter, then you get a cup of coffee, a walk in the park, whatever you enjoy.
Give you something to look forward to.
Makes the whole thing more enjoyable.
So we've covered a lot, but we haven't talked about those times when you just hit a wall.
Right.
You know, when the language is tough, the plot takes a turn, or nothing's sinking in.
Yes.
But don't worry, Speak Smart has some great advice for overcoming those challenges.
They do.
We'll get into those strategies in the next part of our deep dive. All right, so we've covered choosing the right books, active reading strategies, making it all enjoyable.
Yeah.
But what about when we hit a wall, you know?
Oh, yeah.
When the language gets really dense, the plot throws a curveball,
Yeah.
you just feel stuck.
Absolutely. It's part of the process, especially reading in another language.
Right.
But Speak Smart has some great advice for those challenges.
Okay, good. I'm all ears. What do they suggest?
One trap is getting stuck on a single page, trying to understand every single word.
Yeah.
Like staring at a puzzle piece that won't fit.
Oh, I know that feeling.
It can be so frustrating.
Yeah, sometimes I spend so long on one sentence that I totally lose track of the story.
And that's what Speak Smart warns against.
Okay.
Don't get bogged down. Focus on the overall meaning instead.
Mm.
They even said it's like trying to appreciate a view, but you're stuck looking at one leaf.
Zoom out, see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And that's where context comes in.
All right.
They gave an example of figuring out a word just from the surrounding sentences.
Right.
Even if you've never seen it before, the context gives you clues.
It's like being a detective.
Right. And sometimes, even if you don't get every word,
Yeah.
you can still understand what's happening.
Mm.
And as you keep reading, those words might start to make more sense.
It makes sense. Our brains are working in the background.
Yeah. But what about when a whole chapter feels overwhelming?
Oh, yeah. It's just like a wall of text. You don't even know where to begin.
Well, Speak Smart said break it down into smaller chunks.
Okay.
Don't tackle the whole chapter at once. Divide it into sections, maybe a couple of pages.
Yeah.
Then pause and think about what you read.
It's like, how do you eat an elephant?
Right.
One bite at a time.
Exactly. Give your brain a chance to process, avoid that overwhelmed feeling.
I love that. Make it manageable.
Yeah. And speaking of manageable, what about rereading?
Oh, I used to think rereading meant I wasn't a good reader.
I know, right?
But Speak Smart had a different take.
They actually encourage it, especially for those tricky parts.
Oh, interesting.
They say even native speakers reread all the time for clarity or just enjoyment.
So it's not a weakness. It's being a thoughtful reader.
Exactly. Sometimes our brains need a second pass to really get it.
And it might even make it more enjoyable the second time around.
Absolutely. And Speak Smart also talked about audiobooks, which can be so helpful.
Oh yeah, audiobooks are great.
Listening while reading helps with pronunciation, exposes you to the natural flow of the language. It can even make those tough parts suddenly click.
It's like having a tutor in your ear.
Right. Plus, you can listen anywhere, commuting, walking, even doing chores.
Sneak in some extra practice.
Exactly. But one of the most important things they said was to celebrate your progress, no matter how small.
Oh, that's so true. It's easy to get discouraged. But we need to acknowledge how far we've come.
Every page, every new word, every challenge you overcome, it's a victory.
We're building skills, expanding vocabulary, opening up new worlds.
And those small wins add up to big achievements over time.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. There will be frustration, but the key is to keep going.
Keep believing in yourself.
Persistence is key, and that applies to anything in life, not just language learning.
Embracing the process, the ups and downs, it's all part of the journey.
And it's a rewarding one. So that was our deep dive into reading novels in English.
We've covered so much, from choosing books, to strategies, to overcoming challenges.
It's not just about English, it's about a love of reading, curiosity for the world, and resilience.
Beautifully put.
That's worth celebrating.
Absolutely. And here's a thought for everyone listening. How might these tips apply to learning other languages? Or even tackling something new that seems scary?
Good question.
It's about breaking things down, finding what works for you, celebrating every step.
Love that.
Thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. And remember to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and hit that notification bell.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.